Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Om Vishwapad Brahmhamsa Pravartakacharya Stotra Shri Shrimad His Divine Grace Sri Bhakti Siddhanta A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Sri Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishwapad Paramahamsa Pravartakacharya Stotra Shri Shrimad His Divine Grace Sri Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki. I can't. Namacharla Sri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem se ko Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Vedi Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Radha Govinda Gopa Gopinal Shamakund Radhakund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Maya Ki Jai. Jamuna Maya Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Tulasi Maharani Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki, Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Etavat Yatmajer Vira. Etatvat Majer Vira. Karyahya Pachatir Gurau. Shaktya Paramatir Grihyeta. Sadaram Gatamat Sarahi. Hey, I have to do it 3 times. please. But I don't like this meter. I want to do the more South Indian meter, but it's not coming to me. But that's the same one. Etat vajat mera vira. It's not coming. Oh well. Karya hya prachatir guru. Shaktya pramatir griheta. Sadaram gatamatsarahi. Etyavat majer vira. Karya hya prachatir guru. Shaktya paramatir griheta. Sadaram gatamatsarahi. Itavat yatma jayarvira. Karya hya chitra guru. Shaktya pramatir griheta. Sadaram gatamatsarahi. Evat Mataji. Evati. Just exactly like this. Atmajahi. By the offspring. Vira. Oh hero. Karya. Should be performed. He. Certainly. Apachati. Worship. Guru. Unto the superior. Shaktya. With full capacity. Apramittahi. By the sane. Graheta. Should be accepted. Adaram. With great delight. Gata matsarahi. By those who are beyond the limit of envy. Translation is purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai Prabhupada. O hero, your example is quite befitting a son in relation with his father. This sort of adoration for the superior is required. One who is beyond the limit of envy and who is sane accepts the order of his father with great delight and executes it to his full capacity. Purport. When the four previous sons of Brahma, the sages Sanak, Sanatan, Sananda, and Sanat Kumar, refused to obey their father, Brahma was mortified and his anger was manifested in the shape of Rudra. That incident was not forgotten by Brahma, and therefore the obedience of Manu Swayambhuva was very encouraging. From the material point of view, the four sages' disobedience to the order of their father was certainly abominable. But because such disobedience was for a higher purpose, they were free from the reactions of disobedience. Those who disobey their fathers on material grounds, however, are surely subjected to disciplinary reaction for such disobedience. Manu's obedience to his father on material grounds was certainly free from envy, and in the material world it is imperative for ordinary men to follow the examples of Manu. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vaneham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Savaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpa Tribhyascha Kripasinu Bevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Mukam karoti vachalam kam gum langayate gunam yat kripatamaham vande Shri Guru Diyantaranam Paramanandam Aravam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram. Hari Om Tat Sat. Eta vyat yat jair vira karya ya pichatir guru Shaktya Pramater Grihitya Sadaram Gatamatsarahi. O hero, your example is quite befitting a son in relation with his father. This sort of adoration for the superior is required. One who is beyond the limit of envy and who is sane accepts the order of his father with great delight and executes it to his full capacity. So the first thing I thought of when I read this verse is the second verse of the entire Bhagavatam, because this is talking about Gata Matsarahi, those who are beyond the limit of envy. And so generally in this material world, everyone is extremely envious of one another because they're all trying to vie for the one spot. They want to be the one. They want to be Krishna. They want to be the controller. No one can go against them. But if you have a million people that want to do that and none of them are actually qualified to do that, then there's going to be a lot of envy, which means that you want someone to go down so you can go up. And in the spiritual world, there's no envy. So that's one of the qualities that we have to develop if we want to progress in spiritual life. And the Bhagavat Purana, the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the second verse, Dharmita projita kaitavotra paramo nirmat saranam satam. It's for the satam, those devotees who have no envy whatsoever, 0% envy. And for them, they can actually distinguish reality from illusion, the illusion being that we think that we're God, and the reality being that Krishna is actually the Supreme Lord. And with that, everything comes. All the threefold miseries get uprooted, and we can develop love of God, which is the whole point. So, and this is true in any relationship, but especially father-son and guru-disciple, which it was recently Father's Day, wasn't it? Jainitai, was it Father's Day recently? I can't. Something like that. I forgot to call my dad, but I think, we were in New Vrindavan. It was actually really heart-touching that the Kishori Yatra, all these like young girls were traveling, I don't know, I guess they traveled to all the different Rath Yatras, but they were in New Vrindavan, and then they said, because it's Father's Day, Prabhupada is like kind of the father of everyone in ISKCON, because he's the guru and father are very similar figures. They're both like guru here in the Sanskrit. Guru just means unto the superior. So father is also known as guru. Guru is also known, we're this, he's like, Prabhupada always cites, my dear spiritual son. Like, the disciple is like a son unto the the guru, who's like a father. So the guru-disciple relationship is very similar to the father-son relationship. And anyways, these all these young Matajis, they nicely sang like a few, like really expertly composed poems about Prabhupada. And so it was nice because they wanted to respect Prabhupada as the guru for Father's Day. That was how they introduced it. So that was very nice. So today we're going to talk about the guru-disciple / father-son relationship. And just in general, to recap what's been going on in the Bhagavatam, now we're in the third canto, making our way. And this is now when Maitreya and Vidura are talking, and Vidura wants to hear some things, so Maitreya decides to speak about Vrahadev. Did we already read about him coming, or very soon he's going to like manifest? Yeah, and we'll hear a little bit, and we'll hear some more in different parts about how he battles with Hiranyaksha and lifts the earth planet, or lifts it out of the waters of devastation, which was messed up by the demons. So he helps correct that. And so in this, in the Bhagavatam, there's 10 topics, and each part of the Bhagavatam is always focusing on some of these 10. So right now, at least what came to my mind, it was like what's going on is Visarga, which is kind of like secondary creation, because Lord Brahma wants to have progeny, right? He made Swayambhuva Manu to like have that. And it mentions in the purport here, he had these 4 sons, Sanak, Sanatan, Sanandan, and Sanat Kumar, who all they rejected. They didn't want to get entangled into worldly life. And so Lord Brahma became angry. And then we're also talking about Manvantar, because it's like the rules of Manu. That's in one topic of the Bhagavatam. And so we're talking about Swayambhuva Manu here, and he's just came about, born from Lord Brahma, and with his wife. And now what are they going to do? And then also it's of course Isha Anukata, because it's talking about the Lord Vrahadev, and it's also talking about his devotees. All these people are his devotees. Everyone that's like part of creation, part of the demigods and the Prajapatis, they're all, at least in some sense, the devotees of the Lord. So one thing about this relationship of like father and son, I was reading, Prabhupada says, we often hear the Christians, they worship God as like, "Oh Heavenly Father, give us this day our daily bread, forgive us for our trespasses, and help us forgive those who trespass against us." There's like this is like Lord, Jesus told the Christians to pray like this. And Prabhupada and many different Vaishnavas would offer a suggestion to this, that we shouldn't necessarily be approaching God. It's good to approach God for everything. If we're not approaching God for anything, it's good to approach him. But then if we want to go higher, it's not so good to approach God as like my order supplier. Like Chandrasekhar Maharaj has a funny statement. He calls it the like approaching God as like a transcendental waitress or something like that. Like, "Oh, you God, you're here, you ready to take my order? Okay, I want this and I want that and I want this and that, and please give me a lot of money and a beautiful wife, and like let me pass my exam and give me a good job." And like, if we're just approaching God for that, I mean, it's good to have some connection with God, but that's not ultimately the eternal connection, because it's not centered on anything eternal. It's just centered on our own waverings of our mind, of our false ego. We think we're this temporary body, therefore we think this temporary body needs so many different things. And because this body is temporary, even if we get those things, even if Krishna supplies them or he doesn't, it doesn't really matter, because they're going to go away. So, and God's giving everyone their bread anyways. Sure, people are starving, but there's 8 billion people that are living, and trillions of other animals and entities that they're all being supported in their own unique ways. The elephant, Janita, do you know how much food an elephant can eat in a day? 300 pounds easily, 500 and under. They're eating like a big meal, and that's like an average person eats like maybe 3 to 5 pounds. Like 5 pounds is like eating a lot. 3 pounds is like average, So all the elephants are getting what they need. The elephants haven't gone extinct yet, and so Krishna, he is supplying everything with what they need. So I guess it's good if we pray to God, but we should be praying for more eternal things, like devotional service. Like, how can I serve you, my Lord? Or praying for mercy is also another kind of form. It's like kind of in between. Like it says there's 3 levels of chanting: offensive name, clearing stage, and pure stage of chanting. So in the offensive stage, we're like not even focused on the name. We don't understand the name. We don't understand things. So we're not getting very good results. But on the purifying stage, we're praying, oh, Krishna, you've come to this world as your holy name. I'm so impure. I really need to be purified by you so that I can serve you. Right now, I'm just not fit to serve you. My consciousness is so dirty. Please help clean me. And that's one stage. That's better than the offensive stage, but it's not completely pure. Then the completely pure stage is the devotees just, please give me more and more and more and more in service. That's what they're praying, is purely asking for that. And it's not asking for anything in return for that. Because there's also the mixed stage where, oh, Krishna, please give me your service so that I can have the salary from you. I can't, I don't mind serving you, but as long as I get a nice salary. And Prahlad Maharaj rejects this. He says we shouldn't be businessmen with God either. Or like Krishna is talking to the gopis, telling them about different kinds of love. So transactional love like this is actually not love. It's just like a businessman. Like I'm only going to love you if you like scratch my back and feel this desire and need that I have. Like if you don't do it, then I won't, affection won't come. But that can't be eternal. So, but the problem is, like there's not really a problem with that if someone wants to do that. But the problem with it is that we're eternal. So we need something that works eternally. And so unconditional love that's the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the characteristic of the eternal life force in immortality. Is pure devotion. So that's why we cultivate it, because otherwise our existence, although our soul is eternal, we're, like Prabhupada says in the intro to Bhagavad Gita, we're constantly surrounded by the non-existence. Everyone's constantly faced in this material world with everything ending. So we'll go through some good father-son examples in shastra. Does anyone know any example of a father and a son in shastra in a positive, not a negative? We'll get the negatives later, but I don't want to go through the positive ones first. And I thought of 4. Let's see if we can come up with the ones I came up with or different ones. Okay, wait. There's so many hands raising. What's your name? Patita Pavana Das. Hare Krishna Prabhu. Welcome to ISKCON New York, Radha Govinda Mandir. Happy to see you. We'll just go across this way. Jani Tai, what is your example? Vyasadeva and Shukadev. Yeah, I had that as a mixed relationship for some reason, but it is a good example because he heard the Bhagavatam whilst he was in the womb. And that reminds me of another father-son relationship, Arjuna and Abhimanyu. Abhimanyu heard in the womb of Draupadi how to break into the impossible chakra formation, whatever it was. I think it was a chakra. He heard that, but then because his wife had the womanly characteristic of not really caring so much about technical knowledge, she fell asleep during Arjuna's lecture. And when the mother is asleep, the children can't hear inside the womb. So the pregnant mother should try to be awake for the Bhagavatam class. That way their kids inside can hear everything. But so he didn't hear how to escape from that, and that happened to be exactly how he died, which was in the grand scope of things. Since he was a demigod, and they didn't want him to be gone for very long. They said, "Okay, you can go, but only go for 16 years and then come back." So that was how that got arranged in such a ridiculous way. Because in everything, there's nothing random. Everything is arranged by higher authorities. Okay, so Shukadev and Vyasadeva. Yes? Narada Muni and Lord Brahma. Yeah, Lord Brahma. Narada Muni is the youngest of 10 brothers. But he's the best one because Lord Brahma decided to create him to hold down the bhakti potency, because he had a job to do to create the material universe, but he needed someone to hold that down. The actual purpose of the universe. It's nice to create the universe, create all the progeny, get all the activities going, but ultimately the point of all of it happening is those souls need to be exposed to bhakti. So therefore Narada Muni came in. Narada Muni, completely transcendental, really good. Okay, Samakshi, you have to come up with an example now, and it can't be one that was already spoken. Yeah, Lord Sri Ram and Dasarath was told by his wife to give a favor that he promised her, and having the saintly characteristic of like being firm to one's vow, or I guess that's like more of a Kshatriya quality, being completely firm to one's vow, to the point of excessity. Even when something ridiculous is asked, he rejected Lord Ram from the throne and told him to wait for to go out for 14 years or something. 14, right? Yeah. And so, but Lord Ram, he could have easily gone against it, but he didn't. He just folded his arms and went. And Lord Ram is known as Maryada Purushottam. He's showing how we should act. Like, he's not God acting how God would normally act, but he's God showing as the perfect example for how we should act. So, yeah, that's a good one. Okay, Nitish. Yeah, that's a good. That's classic. That's the prototype. What to say? Nanda Baba. He's a little older than generally when you have children. It's like more young, especially in Vedic culture. But in Nanda Maharaj, it said he's has pieces of white coming out of his beard a little bit. It's like we call in the West salt and pepper. Getting a little older. So he has, but that actually in some ways increases the parental bhav, because it's like having an older father like that. It's like it's more nice and increases. If the father is very close to the son in age, then there can be some like competition in some ways. Mataji, did you have an example? Any father and son in all of Shastra that you ever heard? Or guru disciple? I'll make it easy. Or guru and disciple. Yeah, Lord Shiva and Ganesh. I don't know so much about their relationship, but we all hear the story about how Ganesh got his different head, because Lord Shiva didn't know that it was his son, and he was supposed to be guarding Parvati. And I don't know if I should be speaking this on the Vyasasam, because I didn't necessarily hear this from the Sattvatas, but it's a very commonly known story. So it's not. I'm just putting a disclaimer here. This is not necessarily from the Bhagavatam, and it could be bona fide, but I'm not such a scholar that I know such things precisely. So with that cleared, that he didn't know, and then so he decapitated him, and then when his wife got really upset because he had just decapitated their son, he somehow figured out there was some sort of animal that had the exact astrology of Ganesh, and were able to replace the head. And they can do that actually with the expert physicians that know the science of health, like the Ashvini Kumaras. They know the science of how to replace someone's head. That reminds me of another person who had his head replaced. And it's a very good example of a father and son relationship. Not necessarily good. Well, you could say it's good if you say he's the son and not the father. Do you know who I'm talking about? Extra credit if you do. Daksha and Lord Brahma was his father? Yeah, Lord Brahma was his father. So that's kind of a good example, because Lord Brahma was like, I need progenitors. And here Lord Brahma was like, oh, so encouraged by Manu. Thank you, Manu, for just agreeing with what I want to do and just helping me out. I'm so pleased by that. You're my good son. And then also Daksha, he wanted to help make progeny. So Daksha, anyways, he got his head replaced as well. And because also he was dealing with Lord Shiva. But I guess the point I was trying to make was that they understand that how to do things with health very amazingly. They can replace your head. The modern science has not figured out a head transplant yet. Maybe they will one day. So some other examples I thought like right here, Manu and Lord Brahma is a great example of a good relationship with the father. Another one is Parashuram and his father is a really good example. And there's an intense example. I might butcher the exact storyline, so if someone knows it more exact, please pipe up and help me out. But the basic idea that I remember is Jamadagni is his father. He's a great sage, and somehow the mother did something, and it wasn't right. So he tells the first son, "Kill your mother." And he's like, "What? How could I do that?" And then he looks at Parshuram, "Kill your brother and kill your mother." And Parshuram, without even flinching, just does it both. And it's like, wow, that's like so ghastly. Like, how could Parashuram do that? And then one of the explanations is, well, Parashuram, I mean, he's a Shaktivesh avatar of the Lord. He's a genius. So he knew that his father was super powerful and would, because he would be happy with him, ask him if he wanted a boon. And he knew that if he asked to put them back to life, that he'd be able to do it. Similar to how the Vedic sacrifices, you kill a cow in a Vedic sacrifice, or kill a horse, or you kill some animal. But because the priests at the sacrifice understand the nature of reality so well, they can actually somehow bring the thing back to life or put it in a new body that it's like everyone like sees it happening, and like they're aware that like, okay, this like thing got totally upgraded. And no one's, it's not like a slaughterhouse where they kill it and everyone knows that's like, this is really terrible. You know, that's why they never put videos in the slaughterhouse, because if they did, everyone would become vegetarian. Besides a very few, you know, super ignorant people. And so, of course, that's what happens. Jamanagni was pleased and gave his son the whatever benediction he wanted, and he's like, I want the benediction that my mom and my brother are back. And so he said, okay. So even without medical potency, just by like ascetic potency, or like potency of doing austerities, these great kind of miracles can happen. Then there's King Yayati in Puru. Does anyone remember who that is? You remember? No? King Yayati and his youngest son Puru. Okay, I'll remind you. King Yayati married Devyani. Devyani is the daughter of Shukracharya. And then there's all this drama. So Shukracharya ended up cursing him. You become old, because whenever you get entangled in the sex life, there's always drama. That's, you know, and any drama you watch on YouTube or Netflix or whatever, all the drama comes from sex life, and including in Krishna's life, all his drama, the transcendental drama. It's all centered around sex life, transcendental sex life, not to be misunderstood. So he had got cursed to be old, but then he begged forgiveness from Durvas, and a natural quality of like good people is that they're forgiving. So Durvas said, okay, I will give you the benediction that you can transfer to any young person your old age if they agree. So that's another like amazing thing that modern medical science has a lot of catching up to do, to be able to, you can transfer your age. Like once you reach 50 years, you find some 20-year-old, you say, hey, I'll pay $1 million if I can take your 20-year, take 3 or 4 of your 20 years from your 20s, and you live in your 50s for a few years. That would be a pretty amazing business, especially for the old billionaires. They would pay a lot for that, but they can't do it yet. They should try to follow the Vedas and understand it a little better. Maybe they can, by austerities, get some of these potencies. So King Yati switches with his son, and then he has a revelation that, okay, what the hell am I doing? I'm just extending the inevitable. I really just need spiritual enlightenment. And that's one reoccurring theme in the Bhagavatam, is that whoever it is ends up realizing, what the hell am I doing? Let me just go for spiritual enlightenment. And like a good example, I guess, of that. I'm trying to keep it on the father-son type thing, but thank you, Majidi, great example. Yeah, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his father, Jagannath Mishra, who was very learned, and because he was very learned, easy for Mahaprabhu to get into different schools, and although when the father died, then Lord Chaitanya had to like take up responsibility for his mother and his family. But then he just took sannyas at the age of 24. So that's also one point that I wanted to go to, is that it says in the Bhagavatam, another father to all his sons, which my mind is spacing out right now because I'm in the mode of ignorance. But I'll tell you right now, because the ignorant is never in the mode of ignorance. You can always search for anything you want. No, I'm just kidding. You have to be careful on the internet. Rishabdev, telling all his sons, he's saying, Guru na sashat, sajano na sashat, pitta na sasaj, jananani na sasat, daivam na tatsyan, na patishcha sasyan, na mocha yadya samupeta mrityum. You shouldn't be a guru, you shouldn't be a relative, you shouldn't be a father, you shouldn't be a mother, you shouldn't be a demigod, and you shouldn't be a husband or a spouse if you can't liberate your dependents from birth and death, repeated birth and death. That's the point of becoming these roles. Becoming an authority is to help give the real authority, which is coming from Krishna. And what Krishna wants to do is he wants to liberate everyone so they have pure love for him and they can live eternally with him in ecstatic existence. And so anyone that's in any kind of authoritative position, like a teacher or a guru or a parent or demigod, they should be able to deliver their descendants. And so that, let's ask a question back up a second in a big, broad, macro view. What is the purpose of creation? That's a question. That's not a. You raise your hand if you know if you have an answer. It's not a. What is it called? It's not a rhetorical question. Yes, patita pavana prabhu. Yeah, that's one secondary reason for creation. But then what is the primary purpose of creation? It's related to that, to the wayward jivas. Yeah, exactly. Like Krishna wants to create the thing, because otherwise he was like, I don't give a damn about these things, let them just stay in susupti for eternity because they're useless. But then he's like, actually I want to increase the enjoyment of all the souls. So I want these souls to actually be turned on to the proper wavelength, the eternal wavelength, not their silly thing. So I'll create something that seems like it's for them, but really the ultimate purpose is that they go back to Godhead. And so obviously there's this contradiction, this necessary contradiction, because the souls are sleeping souls, or they're bahir mukh jivas, they're turned away from Krishna, they don't want to serve Krishna. But Krishna wants to get them to become enlightened. And so you have all these souls who want sense gratification, who need to be purified. And in the spiritual world, like Krishna says in the 15th chapter, there's two kinds of souls, the perfect and the imperfect. And in the spiritual world, you have the perfect souls who are a great association for these imperfect souls, and you can help them get liberated. But they don't want anything to do with the material world. They think it's like going into the bathroom. Like, if I want to do some business, why would I go into the bathroom with you guys and do a business transaction? Like, that's dirty. It's a disgusting place. It's unpalatable. The pure devotees just want to serve Krishna and please him. They have no envy, but they're going to this place where everyone's envious and trying to vie for that top spot, and they're trying to do all these politics and things to show that they're really God, but no one actually is God, and so it's just a ridiculous clown show of not nice. And so we often get then this clash of interests of the people trying to spiritually manage the world, and things going wrong. And some examples, like mentioned recently, was the four Kumaras. Like, they got brought to the world. They were enlightened beings. Lord Brahma wanted them to help him create more beings, but with creating living beings, it means again being engaged in sex life and being engaged in so many things, increasing the material enjoyment. And these were enlightened souls that understood, if I get entangled in this, it's gonna be really hard to get out of. Let me just stay detached from it. So like on the level of a jnani, they wanted to be detached from the sense gratification. And Lord Brahma was upset because he brought them to be able to increase all the sense gratification so that the jivas would populate everything, so that there would be spirit souls there to be able to then liberate, which is very difficult. And so then we have another example, like we were talking about Narada Muni. He went and preached to the sons of Daksha twice and made them all brahmacharis, made them all sannyasis. And Daksha was so pissed at that. But then Daksha did a smart move, and he had 9 daughters, and then those daughters helped increase the progeny unlimitedly. Then we have, like we mentioned previously, Parashuram and Jagadagni. Now this is not really father-son, this is like guru-disciple. But Parashuram and Bhishma Dev. Bhishma Dev was his disciple, and Bhishma Dev, he's called Bhishma Dev, which means terrible vow. Like when he made his vow of brahmacharya, there was echoes in the Akash, Bhishma, 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 like terrible, like what the hell are you doing? Because he was a Kshatriya. Kshatriyas have motive passion completely. They have many wives, and they need to utilize that passion to be able to create and maintain their empires. So he has this body of a Kshatriya that's completely powerful and suitable to maintain many queens and but he says, I'm going to be a brahmachari, and it's an incompatible thing. And he's riding on a chariot with some Mataji, and because she's riding on the chariot with this big Kshatriya, then she's considered unfit for marriage to anyone. So she's saying, you have to accept me as your wife because I've rode on the chariot with you. I'm not fit to be given to any other person. People will have doubts whether or not you touched me, and therefore my chastity is in question. Therefore you have to be the one that marries me. And she was speaking according to Dharma, but Bhishma Dev said, no, I already made this vow to please my father. So that's a good example. He made the vow to actually please his father because his father wanted he wanted to get married to some Mataji that had some issue that she said, well, if I get married to you, you already have like a son, and if I have sons, then they'll never be king, and so what's the point of getting married to you? And then Bhishma Dev's like, okay, no, I promise I won't be a king because I'm going to be a brahmachari. That's why he said he was going to be a brahmachari. And then, the father was like, his son was his wingman, I guess. And very, that's what it boils down to. And so therefore, the Mataji that he was riding with, does anyone remember her name? There was like 3 sisters, and she was one of them. Ambika, that was her name? Amba was the one on the chariot. Yeah, Amba. So Amba then complains to Parashuram, what is your disciple doing? He has to follow Dharma. He's a Kshatriya. Why won't he marry me? I asked him to marry me. It's like, this is all according to the Dharma. I can't, I'm going to commit suicide. I'm going to do this and that. And one thing is, when a chaste woman says something, you have to be very careful, because chaste women that's one of the most powerful things in the entire universe. Even you could say it is, because Radharani is the most perfect chaste example, and she is the power, you could say the most powerful. She's the power behind everything. She's the power behind Krishna. And you could say it comes from this chastity. So chastity and power are very closely related. So Parashuram was like, yeah, she's right. He should. So I'm going to make him. I'll tell him, don't worry. Bhishma Dev, you should marry her. And he said, no, I made this vow. And this is one of they say in shastra, this is one of the things that you can disagree with your guru or your father, or another way of saying it, that the father or the guru can't make the decision for you, that you should get married or not. It's just up to the individual. I mean, they can give recommendations. Parashuram was trying to give a very strong recommendation, and they ended up fighting for how many days? Jainitai, do you remember? 18 days? They fought for a long time, and amazingly, even though Parashuram has killed all the Kshatriyas, like, how many times? 14 times? 21 times. He killed all the Kshatriyas in the world, practically speaking. Probably not completely all of them, but he completely diminished their dynasties, 21 generations. So it was basically like, I kill you and your whole family, then I wait till like all the babies grow up, and then they have a whole dynasty, and then I kill that, and you just do that over and 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 over 21 times. So he had no problem with defeating all these powerful Kshatriyas. But Bhishma Dev was so powerful partially because of his vrat of brahmacharya, like especially when Kshatriyas become brahmacharya, because they have so much energy that like they become super powerful and undefeatable in battle. Like Arjuna was extremely powerful because he was when they were out for 14 years, he was also undergoing the vow of brahmacharya, and so that was like explicitly stated in places that he was much more powerful because of that. And even in you like hear like modern day, sometimes people hear about this, like they said like Mike Tyson like tried to be brahmachari to like help his boxing skills, and people sometimes try to do that because they understand that if you waste your substance, then you're gonna have to, your body's gonna have to replace it. Like the Vedas say, this one brahmachari somewhere, he had this great way of distributing books where he'd go into a town square or whatever, somewhere where people congregate. He would just start like, 80 drops of blood, 80 drops of blood, and just start yelling that until like people like, what's going on? And then when there's like a few people like watching, like ready to like listen, then you explain how 1 drop of semen is worth 80 drops of blood. And like in Ayurveda, it says it takes from when you eat food, from the time it becomes food till semen takes around 30 days, and it's like the essence of the essence of the essence of the essence 7 times over of all the good nutrients in the food. And then that can go, and it can either have you enjoy your senses for like a minute, or it can completely empower your mind and intelligence and your defenses, and give you extremely good health in mind and body. And so telling people that, then they would like buy the book, like, oh, the book talks about that. Because like we were saying before, people are interested in health, right? All the YouTube videos about sattvic health and different things like that, millions of views. They want to know because they're attached to their body. So it's a good avenue to preach to them. So that was Parashuram and Bhishma Dev, like one example of this kind of. I guess Bhishma Dev was just helping increase his father's sense enjoyment and decreasing his. But he was also Mahajan, and he spoke so many nice things. There's we're talking about Lord Ram and Dasaratha, and there's Bharat Maharaj rejecting his mother. Like his mother wanted him to be the king, but he said, no, I'm just putting the chapels of Ram on the throne, and that's it. I can't listen to you. So that was another example. So what is the most famous example that everyone should be able to think of in the Bhagavatam of a disciple rejecting his guru? Yeah, Bali Maharaj rejecting Shukracharya. And so Shukracharya told him not to worship the Supreme Person, not to surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Like Ayendra Prabhu says, if your temple commander tells you not to go on Harinam, then he's not your temple commander. If your guru tells you not to go on Harinam, then he's not a guru. If your temple whatever, he's like, if your friend, he's not your friend. So similarly, like if the guru is saying something that's completely against shastra, then he's actually not in the position of guru, and at that point he's not fit to be followed. So it's if some disciple still has their wits about them, then they should not follow an order. Although we have to be very careful, because sometimes there are very contradictory things when trying to follow Dharma, and generally it's said that the secret of Dharma is hidden within the Mahajans, in the great sages, so we should just follow in their footsteps. But Narahari Sakar Thakur writes a few reasons how it should work if there's some discrepancy between the disciple and the spiritual master. So in general, like Prabhupada says in the purport here, in general, where is it? In the material world, it is imperative for ordinary men to follow the example of Manu. So he's talking about fathers and sons. And similarly, it's imperative for the disciples to follow their gurus. But Narhari Sakar Thakur says, if the spiritual master, this is in his book Bhajam Amrita, the nectar of doing bhajan. If the spiritual master commits a wrongful act, breaking Vaishnava regulative principles, then in that case, one should, in a solitary place, confront him for his rectification, using logic and appropriate conclusions from sadhu, shastra, and guru references. But one is not to give him up. And one should not be hesitant or fearful in confronting or challenging a spiritual master, for it has been prescribed that one must appropriately discipline even a spiritual master who is bewildered about what he should or shouldn't do, or who is experienced or ignorant, or who is deviated from the proper, Krishna consciousness, or is bewildered by false pride. So there's some rare cases, and unfortunately, it's happened a lot in the past, where people unnecessarily follow an authority that's not really suitable to be followed, and it's called blind following. We shouldn't be blind following, but we also shouldn't be blindly rejecting either. That's one big problem of the material world. Like a good example, in New York, there was someone that got married to some outside lady, and she ended up contaminating the person's mind to the point where they were having chicken inside the temple. And so Prabhupada was like, he got mad at them, but he also got mad at the people in the temple. Like, what are you doing? Why are you just blindly following? Like, if they're doing something wrong, you should have said something. You should have spoken up. Why are you waiting so long for this to happen? Now that somehow there's meat that got into the temple. And Narhari Thakur Sakar says also, if we see this happening, because different spiritual masters are on different levels, and they're worshipable. So sometimes on a lower level, a spiritual master on the lower level may make a mistake. If you shouldn't give them up immediately, but if they refuse to go back to following Vaishnava principles, then one has to give them up. If the spiritual master is acting enviously towards that is what's connected to the Supreme, like in the case of Shukracharya, he's a spiritual master, and Krishna even mentions him in the Bhagavad Gita about he's like one of the exemplary people showing what intelligence is, and Krishna is manifest in him as intelligence, as the epitome of intelligence. Krishna is saying, I'm the epitome of all these things. And he says, of great thinkers, I'm Ushana, who is Shukracharya. So Shukracharya is not just some random person that's telling you to like not worship God. He's a heavy duty person, heavy duty guru. But Bali Maharaj was correct in rejecting what he had to offer, because he was not offering him the Krishna conscious conclusion. He wasn't offering him surrender to Krishna. He was saying, don't surrender to Krishna. So if the spiritual master is bewildered regarding the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he's adverse to expanding the fame of Krishna. He refuses to accept hearing or chanting about Krishna's pastimes, or he's completely bewildered listening to like false praises and becoming contaminated by Mayavad philosophy or different bad material contaminated things, then they must be renounced. And understanding that every spiritual master is actually Sakshad Haridvena Samasa Shastriya. A real spiritual master is a conduit for Krishna to communicate and to rectify a soul. That Krishna has, through that person, or directly, like in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, finally Gopakumar gets back to Godhead, or he's back to Godhead with Narayan. He's not back to Krishna Loka at this point, but Narayan says, I even took birth as your guru to help you come here. So because I didn't see you making any progress, so I went beyond all the bounds of things I normally do, and I took birth as your guru just to help you. So sometimes Krishna even directly comes as a spiritual master, although generally the spiritual master is understood as Kintu Prabhurya Priya Eva Tosya, the like close friend, the close of Prabhu, of Krishna. And so since Krishna is the original guru and the source of the potency of the guru and the authority of the guru, that if there's a certain guru somehow falls away from the principles and the disciple has to reject them, he should take shelter of Lord Krishna, understanding that Lord Krishna will make all the arrangements. And this is another really important point that Bhaktisiddhanta makes in his essay entitled Putana. Putana is an essay where he wrote about how to understand spiritual organizations, and it's very good. But one thing he says that there's a definite line of succession of bona fide teachers of truth. The bona fide teacher should be available sooner or later to the real seeker of truth, but is not recognizable by the hypocrites and atheists who don't really want to serve God. So we have this dichotomy of the atheists need to serve God, but they can't recognize the teacher that can teach them, and they won't surrender to them because they're atheists. And everyone in the material world is in this category, including us at some point. We were also in that category until we got connected to this. So for someone who can't identify a guru because they don't have any spiritual knowledge, because they don't have a guru to give them spiritual knowledge, what do? Well, fortunately, there's the words of the sadhus to help them correct themselves, and Bhaktisiddhanta's words specifically it's necessary for the candidate for spiritual enlightenment, before the bona fide teacher, if the bona fide teacher is not manifesting to the pure cognitive essence of the seeker, in other words, if Krishna doesn't reveal spiritual knowledge to us, we should look within, we should concentrate, self-examine, and try to cut off any lurking traces of insincerity. He says, so it's like Gaur Govindamar is always saying, it's not about the guru being bona fide, it's about the disciple being bona fide. Like Krishna is bona fide. Krishna can come in a second. Like Prahlad is asked by Hiranyakashipu, is Krishna in there? Like, yeah, he's in the pillar, he's everywhere. So Krishna can easily, he's actually closer than the closest to us. There's no question of him being able to manifest to us. It's a question of if Krishna was right there and he tapped you on the shoulder and told you, okay, Prabhu, please stop doing that. Like, would you listen to him? That's the thing. And if not, then like, why would he do it? So if he's not coming as Chaitya Guru or as the Diksha Guru or as the Vartma Pradaksha Guru, then how can he, the seeker has to eliminate the insincerity, and then that allows the avenue for Krishna to be able to do this, to actually correct the disciple. And it's already 9 o'clock, so normally I would just end the class abruptly, but because I was talking too long, maybe I'll let like 1 or 2 comments or questions come. First one to raise their hand gets it. No questions? Okay, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Om Tat Sat. Hare Krishna.